G'day guys, and welcome to another YouTube lesson. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 syllabus dot points. We're going to be looking at avoid overextension of finance and other resources, the using technology, and economic conditions, and how these 3 things impact on small and medium enterprises and how they have an influence on the establishment of small and medium enterprises. So the first syllabus dot point, avoiding overextension of finance and other resources. A business will generally always have some level of debt financing. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that can be used to grow a business. It is generally a good thing, but as we said, it can be a little counterintuitive. People think debt's bad, but it's good to have some level of debt to be able to gear or leverage yourself so that you can further grow a business. If you don't have a loan at all, then there's a phrase that's used, you could have too many lazy assets. That's things that are of value that could be used to help gear or leverage your business to make it grow and succeed. However, here's the problem. On the flip side, it can be a massive issue or problem for a business, especially for a new business, if they have too big a loan, if a business is geared or leveraged in such a way that they don't have the capacity to pay back the loans that they've taken out. They can't service the debt. That means if you've got $1 million factory, let's say interest rates are 10% to keep it simple, and therefore each year you'd need to pay $100,000 to just pay the interest on that loan, let alone pay any principal off. If you're not generating at least $100,000, then you're going to find yourself in some financial difficulty. What's happened in that instance is you've overextended on your finance. So if a business does overextend on their finance or purchases too many other additional resources, such as hiring too many workers, having too many expensive machines, then it may find that it cannot service or pay its debts. And this is one of the major reasons for a failure of a new business. So we're really looking at what things can have a negative impact on a business or positive, and what are the things that lead to greater failure or success for a business. So to recap, finance can be a good thing. Leveraging your business, getting out a loan means that you can grow more quickly. It's not a bad thing to a degree. But by myself, I wouldn't own my place. I would never have been able to afford to pay for this house in cash and to save up in the time it's taken me to pay it off. The property prices just went up too much. So it was good for me to be able to get a loan for my property. But we'd all love to live a $3 million or have a $3 million house on the water. But I would not be able to, my wife and myself who earn good money, to be able to service that loan. So you don't want to overextend on your finances. All right, the second syllabus dot point we're looking at today is using technology. Now, similarly to avoiding overextending a business's finance, using technology can be said to be a double-edged sword. If you've not heard of that term before, a double-edged sword, what that refers to is that it can be of use, but it also can kind of stab you and the opposition at the same time. So it can be very useful technology, i.e., example, in the case of the American supermarket Walmart, and the Australian business Woolworths. Both of these businesses have used self-scanning at the checkouts. Now, this has enabled massive cost savings because, you know what I'm talking about, at Woolies and Coles and so on. They've got scanners, you rock up, they have one person supervising the 8 scanners that are happening at the same time. That's saved on the labour costs that would otherwise have been there. You can employ one person to kind of check what's going on instead of having 8 workers having to scan all the items. So that's been useful for the business. But what's the downside? What's that double-edged sword? Well, the downside is that it's not cheap to purchase these self-scanners, costs money to purchase that initial capital, that initial technology. And as a result, if you're a small business like a convenience store, then it's not going to be so practical. You can't afford to pay upfront for that technology. The long-term benefit will be useful, but you can't afford to do it. And sometimes businesses, like with the loans, and we talk about overextending on finance, taking out too much of a loan, sometimes with technology, SMEs get caught up in the hype of new technology, they pay a fortune for it, and they just don't sell enough of particular items to make it worth it. And they end up not being able to service their loans for that new technology. It's not a benefit in the end for them. Economic conditions. We're talking about the upturn and the downturn in the economy. So the boom of the economy and the bust of the economy. If the economy is going through a boom, as was the case in Australia throughout most of the 1990s, before you guys were born, when I was at school, and also through the 2000s, then businesses generally got a benefit from that. They saw more sales, they saw more people spending, and they saw a much higher chance of success. So economic conditions, unfortunately, you don't have a lot of control over that. It is really, a flip of the coin as to whether we'll be in boom or in recession. And we saw the opposite of that boom time during the GFC. Now, Australia fared reasonably well through the GFC, our reliance on China, I guess, and the fact that China was still growing and purchasing our raw materials. But during the GFC, most economies around the world saw a downturn in their GDP. So if you're a business that's starting out during a period of a downturn like the GFC, most economies having a recession, then that's going to have a big negative impact on your business and your ability to be able to survive. If you are, though, a business that's starting out and you're going through a boom period, like we saw through most of the 90s or the late 90s and the early 2000s in Australia, a golden time for our economy, then you're likely to have a greater chance of succeeding. All right, guys, thanks for listening and see you next time.